Zoom hit you guys all the way over there. But yeah, so quickly before we get started, I just want to remind folks that Pangeo has a code of conduct. Please follow it. Respect other people's lived experiences, and remember that their stories are their own to share, not yours. So I want to start with a question for everyone of why are we here? Why have you chosen to work in climate or geosciences at whatever institution you're at? Why have you chosen to be part of this Pangeo community? I think a lot of us do that on top of everything else that we're actually paid to do. And really, why are we having this conversation? And I'll start with why am I here? And most simply, my title is Web Application Developer at the Gulf of Maine Research Institute. But that doesn't really capture all that I do. I do data management for Naracruz. All the data from the buoys from New York City to Newfoundland flow through my team at one point or another. I'm on the steering committee for Ocean Hack Week and manage a lot of their infrastructure. And just recently started doing a lot of hacking on XPublish. But really, that still isn't who I am, because I'm not just that person at work. I'm a son, sibling. Some more than a couple friends have me introduce their kids as crazy uncle. I'm an emergency medical provider, wilderness educator, and trip leader, search and rescue team member, backcountry skier, trail builder, whitewater kayaker, all sorts of other stuff. And I think that's key for everyone to remember that you're not just a scientist, you're not just a developer, you're not just an engineer as we go through this. So let's rephrase and focus this a little bit because I am not a mental health professional. So let's talk about stress in the geosciences. So what is stress? It's kind of this big nebulous thing that a lot of people have a hard time getting a definition of. And you actually go into the medical resources and there's no there's no real clear definition. Eventually I was able to dig this out of the Cleveland Clinic. But really stress is back from when we were tiny furry mammals trying not to get eaten. It's that little tingle in the back. It started out as that little tingle in the back of our head that said, run away, something's about to make a snack out of you. But it's both a positive and a negative thing. It can be helpful, avoiding getting eaten, but can also be problematic when it starts impacting your daily life in other ways. So stress, like many things, occurs on continuums. There's no clear, nothing's always positive or eustress, and stuff may not always be truly at the distress. It may be short and confined, acute, or it may be cumulative. But it falls in all these ranges. So the current terminology is that we use is stress injury because it's a treatable thing. A lot of people think that burnout, you hit burnout, you're done. It's game over, man. There's not just quit now, but it's something we can recover from. So that's why the terminology is now using injury because it's treatable, it's not a permanent condition. There's three main sources of stress. Critical incidents, like in the wilderness medical world, a big coming up on a patient. What do they do, and how does that affect me? Daily hassles. Does your organization just have all sorts of layers of bureaucracy that you have to fight through to get things done? And the relationships, dealing with people. There's actually this defined stress continuum that comes out of the military. And I'll get back to why I keep coming to first responders, military, and whatnot in a bit, and why that's appropriate to us. The military's found that they needed to be able to figure out where people were at a while ago. So they've got this very detailed version. The one that I first encountered was from the Responder Alliance. This focus on first responders, wilderness guides, folks who may only be working in a field for a short amount of time, or working with a group for a short amount of time before they move on. But this this one is what's I think find really clear, that you can very quickly put yourself in one of these categories. And Rich, if you could drop that link into the chat, I'd like people to actually take a minute and look at this and figure out where they're at. Personally, I know I am a little more towards the orange than the yellow than I want to be, especially with the stress of this talk coming up. This weighs on me. But yellow is kind of my baseline these days, unfortunately. So hopefully everyone can take a second, open a private browser, and hop into that HackMD. We're using HackMD to keep your responses private, because Google Docs doesn't always do that. Oh, I thought I had shared that link with you. Let me try and share this directly. Okay, are folks able to get in there and edit? So there's some other prompts for discussion later, that we'll get back to. But while you're thinking about that, I want to go back to that question. Why are we here? And I'd say that for most of us, we're pretty personally mission driven. And we're likely in mission driven organizations, institutions that we've chosen. So what are some of our missions? I found when I actually went down the list of who called into the last showcase meeting and collected the missions from their organizations. I found a lot of them really resonated together. And the actual name of the institution wasn't as important as the fact that we all are wanting to do the same things. We care about humanity. We care about ecosystems. We care about the world. We have chosen to take upon ourselves and our teams to take on the problems of the world. So that's a really big mission that I think most of us have taken on. So that's where I think it really comes back. When you start talking about mission and teamwork, the stress continuum applies to teams also. So how is that mission interacting? How are we feeling about that mission? Is directly affected by our team stress level. How effective can we do this? And I think we all have a big mission here. So kind of two stories to start connecting it to the geosciences, of kind of the spectrum of acute to cumulative stress in the geosciences. So these are from two of my coworkers that I have permission to share these stories with you. At the top, you can see hottest days on records and marine heat waves. These are from the Gulf of Maine. And one of the folks on my team spends a lot of time doing a quarterly report on the conditions in the Gulf of Maine, looking at sea surface temperatures, tracking the heat waves. And it's a little hidden by the graphic below, but you can see that over time, we've spent much more time in a heat wave state for the Gulf of Maine. And that may not seem that bad, but he's in that data every day. And despite how disconnected he wants to be to step back and do the analysis and not worry about it, every time there's a piece of data that's showing elevated temperature, there's a little voice in the back of your head saying, that's bad. That's really bad for all of us. And that builds up over time. On the other hand, one of my other coworkers had a wildfire bearing down on her parents. That she had been tracking extreme temperatures down in the Southwest for a while and fires, and then all of a sudden one sprung up, ran across a huge chunk of landscape, and then stopped 2 ridges from her parents' community and stayed there for 3 weeks. And every morning, my coworker would come in and start the day by looking for the latest satellite flare-up imagery, reading all the reports from evacuations. So this just built up more and more, but was this key like single event that she thought she didn't have to worry about, that she was looking at these larger scale problems. But all of a sudden it struck really close to home. So I think we need to remember that as much as we may think we are scientists, developers, engineers, and we can approach things objectively, we are humans first. As climate scientists, we encounter the cryosphere on its worst days. We are the first responders in climate. So how do we start to manage stress? I'm just going to go read through this quote. You know, people tell me you're not supposed to do that during presentations, but it's happening. The expectation that we can be immersed in suffering and loss daily and not be touched by it is as unrealistic as expecting to be able to walk through water without getting wet. This sort of denial is no small matter. The way we deal with loss shapes our capacity to be present to life more than anything else. The way we protect ourselves from loss may be the way in which we distance ourselves from life and health. We burn out not because we don't care, but because we don't grieve. We burn out because we've allowed our hearts to become so filled with loss that we have no room to care. So I think with our missions, a lot of us have found ourselves at the intersection of what skills we have and the work that needs to be done. And I think we need to recognize that there's another factor here, that this intersection doesn't always work. We also need to be aware of what brings us joy, what relieves our stress, and figure out when we can work in that intersection, and know when we are outside of that, because that's where the problems start building up. And it really helps to also know where those points are for your team, so you aren't just always putting someone out of that good intersection. See if you can take that on, or if they can take some on for you. So one way to think about this is what charges your battery, what helps you release some stress, whether it's at work or at home, and what adds to that stress. Being able to sit down and really clearly say, like, yep, this is a problem. This is good. And keeping track of how you are hitting those points. For me, it is like most of the time when I'm working on data, I'm deep and buried within a pipeline, and I'm not actually seeing the values flow past. But I stick my head up and to check that things are working as expected, and I see a value, and that seems bad light goes on in the back of my head more often than I want these days. So that definitely drains my battery. Enabling the folks on my team to have successes and to do new things really does charge my battery. And then outside of work, being able to go for a ski. I'll probably run away this evening to go enjoy a free ski night at a local mountain, let some of this go. But I think most importantly, you are not alone. A lot of other folks are in this place, and we need to start having this being able to have discussions about it. There are some articles I've linked in the doc to the presentation, which has links to all these tweets and articles. The actual few papers that gave me the impetus, I lost track of for this talk. I lost track of. So if people find those, I'd love them. I spent a long time trying to find them again. And remember to reach out to others and remind them that they are also not alone. So thank you.